I got to a point in my life where I wasn't happy anymore and didn't really know why, but knew that I wasn't really fulfilled in like a management role. And I think it was the lack of creativity, to be completely honest with you now, looking back at it. Human design as a tool, it definitely helps you understand more about yourself. I guess you can be a little bit easier on the parts of you that are authentic.
Hi guys, and welcome back to a Road Less Doubtful podcast. I'm excited today to talk with you. Just a really candid chat with one of my friends and co-workers, Revill.
I always found it hard to switch off work, and I think being a Capricorn as well, like we're pretty renowned for being ambitious and career focused, and that's always been my driving point. It's been a long time coming, and I think it's like another pivotal moment of growth that, you know, once you go through certain hurdles, you come out the other side and you realize why. And I think
welcome to a Road Less Doubtful podcast, leaning into the parts of you that have been hidden away. I'm your host, Emily Wilson. Hi guys, and welcome back to a Road Less Doubtful podcast. I'm excited today to talk with you. Just a really candid chat with one of my friends and co-workers, Revill. I'm excited to have her on. We're going to talk a little bit about human design and a little bit about, actually a lot about, the synchronicities that we have found working together and in life, and how very similar we are. So welcome, Lou. How are you?
thank you. Hi, Em. I'm good. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you for getting this podcast off the ground. So the first thing I am going to say is, without Lou, this podcast wouldn't have happened. And then we will go back and talk about how all of this came to be. But to start with, Lou is the one behind the scenes dealing with me. She is the one who takes all of my ideas and all of my brain dumping while I'm tattooing and takes it all on board and makes her head messy, and then goes and does things with my ideas. And without her, none of this would be possible. So do you want to describe to people how you became who you are in a sense of work first, and then we'll dive deeper into the who you actually are, but like what you love to do, what lights you up, and what you do for me now?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a very creative person, and I kind of always have been since I was really little. So I was always pretty certain about what I wanted to do when I went through school, and I come out and I knew that I wanted to study design. So I went on and did that. Studied for 3 years, lived in Brisbane, and then came out of uni and went on to just working full time, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do after I'd finished studying. I hadn't really thought that far ahead. So was working in retail when I was studying, and then met, she's a good friend of mine now, but met my, at the time, manager. And we worked together in menswear for a while, in like men's suiting. So it was a very, obviously, like male dominant industry, and you had to be quite assertive, but that was not my personality at all. So I didn't really feel like I did well in that job. But others saw different opportunities in me, as you would know, Em, with many topics about people seeing different things in you than you can see in yourself. So I then changed companies, and I started working for a pretty well-known brand just in retail management. And I started in like a small concession store, which was inside, I think it was David Jones at the time. And then they succession planned me over a couple of years, and I ended up opening one of their flagship stores with them as an assistant store manager. I think I was 24, 25 maybe at the time. And then they'd had big plans for me after that. But I got to a point in my life where I wasn't happy anymore and didn't really know why, but knew that I wasn't really fulfilled in like a management role. And I think it was the lack of creativity, to be completely honest with you now, looking back at it. And at the time, a position come up for a visual merchandiser to work on their state team. And I'd done like a little bit of work with their visual merch team with a couple of store opens. So were more than happy to put me through the application process, but I had to do like an external application like anyone else would if they were working outside of the company with someone else. So yeah, I did that, and then I actually thought I had a pretty good chance at getting the job, seeing as I was already working internal. But I didn't get the job. They gave it to one of their casual visual merchandisers, and she was amazing. So she took on that role, and then because I'd applied for a different role, I essentially had to step out of my management role because it was a conflict of interest to the one I was applying for. And so when I didn't get the job, I then had to make the choice whether I wanted to stay on as a team member or I had to essentially find something else to do. And because I wasn't happy in the management role, I guess it forced me to just really take a step back. And at the time I was not really in a good place in my living situation either. So I had like quite high anxiety, which I'd experienced a little bit through like growing up early, teenage years. And then, it was kind of at a point where it was pretty hard to manage. So decided to move back here to Hervey Bay, Maryborough. And I saw it as like a massive step backwards, as a big failure. But in reality, it was actually the starting point that I needed. So yeah, hindsight is great. Not great going through it though. So that's what led me to here. And then that's what also led me into working in a design and marketing job. And I guess like that was my starting point of getting into the industry that I'm currently in. But I'm very analytical as well. So I like structure and, knowing how things work, but then I also love the creative freedom. So I feel like marketing does give you the best of both worlds in that respect. And I've had, before working for I've had 2 previous roles within marketing, and I guess that's what leads me to where we are today.
It's funny because even listening to that, I only knew half of that. I don't even know if I knew half of that. Like, that's so bad. Like, we've been friends for a little while and I hired you, right? Like, but we really didn't do a resume. And this really just shows you, firstly, how I function and how you function, which is really cool because you need these different people around you. And so the same way as I hired my other team members, I hired you on gut instinct, on feel, on personality, on energy, and just this knowing that you would be the right fit. And I also had all of my doubts around that. So there's a few things in everything you just said. So I'm just going to bounce through a few of them and then come back to you. But even just not knowing about like your visual merchandising, and I'm like, how did she just do our Christmas tree really quickly like that and put a few baubles there? Like, pack up these boxes and just make it look so good and so simple. And you and Reagan do that stuff. And like, I think I'm creative until I watch you two do things, and we are, but we're all creative in different ways, and it all just brings everything together. So I just find that funny that I didn't know any of that, and yet it's all the things I needed in you. And I definitely needed your analytical brain because I really don't have much of that at all. And every time I think I start to use part of that brain, I brush it off and go, no, that's not how I work. And it's just things that I've learnt aren't my strong suits and where to feel into my things. But yours is actually that, as well as your big heart and all of your marketing. But we had a conversation. So you had all of that experience and you thought it was a big step back. And like you said, hindsight is huge. And I'm just going to wait for that. I'm just waiting to see if you come back, Lou.
Okay.
All right. Like hindsight is such a wonderful thing because most of the times where I will look back at any of the things that I thought were my setbacks have always been the things that have catapulted me. And I think as we start to look back at that kind of stuff, we always see that's the case if we're willing to open our eyes and see the learnings. But I don't know when it was. I don't know what date it was. Do you reckon it was like 6 months, 12 months before you came on board that we had a conversation just at the gym one day at F45?
I think it was around 12 months because I left there in April last year. So it would have been maybe like a month or two before that, I want to say.
Yeah, and I don't even know how that conversation came up exactly, but I just know that you were sort of at this crossroads of, again, things. So you had, I'm going to say, again, I didn't know you very well, but if we look at the pattern of what you put yourself through, like you put such high expectations on yourself, that's what I see, but I can see that because it's something I do within me. Oh my God, my throat. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Oh, I get tickle. I need a drink of water. You put all of those expectations on yourself, and sometimes they're maybe not your own expectations. Like it's just come from outside influence, but you haven't ever really fully looked at that. And I think that's why we wanted to jump on and have this conversation, or why I was so excited to have this conversation with you, is because over the course of us hanging out and working side by side, it's just become this really cool friendship, and realizing that there's so much of you in me and vice versa. And sometimes I hate to admit it because it means that I am getting older, but you are me, like, 9 years earlier. And I just see so much wisdom and so much potential and so many places where I'm like, you are so on the right path where you can't see it, all of those things, which is super, super exciting. But hindsight is a wonderful thing. And so you did all of that learning and you weren't sure exactly where you wanted to go, which made you move back to Hervey Bay, Maryborough, which you thought was a huge step back. But then you took on a different role and you had different learnings, and then the next crossroads, because that's how it keeps happening. That's just how life rolls. And so, then we had this conversation. So whether it was crossroads in relationships, work, all of the above. And I just remember I had just started looking into human design myself, because I would have been around 6 months to a year out of my marriage. And it was something that became a tool for me. And you guys have heard me talk about this a bit. And I remember just saying to Lou, you're a generator and you're a 6-2. And with that said, life can look a little harder until you're around 30, being that you have that 6 in your profile. But also being a generator, you were doing all of these things because you thought you should. And it's because you're analytical, your mind would take over and tell you how to do all of the things based on what you've been told and taught and what you've told yourself. But as a generator, we're supposed to listen to our instincts and our gut, and we get really, really good at squashing that. So I know we had that conversation. So I'm going to get you to maybe talk us through between that and you coming on board with me, and then we will, expand on that afterwards.
Yeah, so I think I vaguely recall it being a Sunday, and we'd done like the morning class, and we didn't really know each other all that well, just through going to the gym. And I remember, I think we might have been talking about like sort of being at that crossroads in like personal and in business. And I was like, I just, like I really enjoy the job that I'm doing, but I just don't feel fulfilled in this industry. And you're like, let's get a coffee. And that's when I think you suggested to me human design. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but tell me more, because I'm a curious person and I'll give anyone the time of day to talk about what they love. And then when you started to explain what a generator was and how that energy type works, and that you, by doing things that give you joy and light you up, you almost become magnetic to opportunities and, I guess, expansion in the way of energy towards other people. It just made so much more sense. And even looking back in hindsight, about where I was when I was 25, and in reality, like, I wasn't doing something that lit me up. So there's no wonder that I felt like I'd kind of hit rock bottom, or that I wasn't, you know, in the flow of how life should have been. Yeah, so that was probably our first conversation, and then I don't remember all too much after that, but I do recall a conversation that we had, and you said you're going to work for me one day, and we kind of just like had a bit of banter and joked about it, and I was like, yeah, okay. And then maybe, so if that was April, it was probably around November that you actually said to me, late November, early December, that you said to me, I'm serious, like, I have a job for you if you want it. And so I then had to spend some time to consider that job, which was, well, that offer that you've given me.
And I wasn't very good at selling that job. Like, let's be honest. Like, I was joking, but I was like, I really want this. And I remember feeling the same way about Reagan. I was like, can someone just tell her that I really want her to come work for me? Because, like, she might not want it, but if someone else tells her to. And it was sort of the same with you. It was like I actually had this full on, like, it's going to happen. I can see it. Like, it sounds silly. I'm not actually someone who sees the picture. Like, if I have to set a goal, I don't see it. I feel it. And I could feel it, but I had no understanding of how. And that's a muscle that I've built. Well, you know, even if we take just going paragliding last week, like, that is a muscle that has started to be built. And it's something that now is like a massive fun game to play, because I see what happens in my life when I do. And I think you're starting to see that. And so it's been fun to watch, like, the fact that I could just like drop this seed and had no idea what would happen of human design to start with. But then also this, like, well, what if she does say yes? Like, I have nothing to lose. But I was very scared because you had a very good career and I was still struggling with, if she leaves a career like that, I am then responsible for her. And I couldn't give you any of that. I couldn't be like, no, actually, that's Lou's choice. I can tell her what's, you know, on offer right now, but it's actually your choice in the end, because that's something that I struggle with, is like taking all of that on myself. But I do remember Australia Day, and I remember us sort of joking about it again, but a little bit more seriously, like, Lou, have you had a thought, because you're still sitting in this place where I don't think you're happy, and if it's not working for me, I just really urge you. And honestly, it was only backed up by my own things that I had done, of being like, nah, there's more in this, girl. Like, there's so much more in there.
And I think even watching you now, like, having worked with you, it's been, what, 9 months now, maybe 8 or 9 months, how you use your intuition and your gut instincts to lead with decision making. I don't know, it's kind of like that. No, not at all. But I think it's interesting because, like, our brains are wired to take over and to keep us safe, right? So, like, often we ignore our gut instincts and listen to our brain and our logical thought patterns that are happening, but often they don't lead you to the most fulfilling path or the one that's best for you. So, yeah, I think
it's literally this internal GPS, as we've discussed and trademarked and all come up with together. And because it really is, it's always within us. And when we look at those places where we do come back to that in any moment of our life, it works so much better. And not everyone, like, obviously not everyone is a generator. And so not everyone is listening to their gut instincts, but it is still an intuition, it's still a feeling, and it is still not generally a logical mind thought pattern. That just takes over after the initial pattern happens. So, yeah, so you finally decided to leave that job.
Yeah.
And you stepped into me, and then you had a few more creepy moments happen that are synchronistic. If you feel like sharing those, you are welcome to.
Yes. I don't know where you want me to start with that one, but
wherever you like.
Yeah, so I started, I don't even remember now. Yeah, it would have been April. And then Oh, I don't know. Where do you want me to start?
Well, what happened was, like, Lou and I, she came on board and we've made it work, and it's been the most amazing thing. And I'm going to dive into what we realized only a couple of months ago, really, around how her human design is literally lined up to feed my human design. And as bad as that sounds, it's like I need her for my life's purpose and she needs me for hers. And it's crazy how that all lines up. But I remember the day you were walking in the door for your first day, and I still have it on my Instagram because I was like, I know I need to mark this date. And I did a live just say, I know this is the start of something really special. I think I might cry. Anyway, let's see. Emily's going to hold it together this time. And I remember thinking this is going to be something super special. I know it is, and I can't wait to see where we take it. And what we've achieved in 9 months, like with you and the team in there, and being able to steer it in this whole other direction, to have almost these 2 separate businesses starting to go. And I know that this one feeds you so well. And they're dreams that I don't believe you've allowed yourself to imagine were possible before. Because I haven't allowed myself to believe that they were possible until you came on board. And it's allowed me to do some of these things, which is just crazy and cool all at the same time. But if we want to get a little bit more woo-woo and a little bit more creepy and a little bit more spiritual for anyone who wants to listen, we were down at CMC. Was it CMC? We were coming back from CMC, weren't we? I think when you told me about
It's just, yeah.
And so we were coming back from a country music festival. Of course we were, because it's me. And and we were sitting in a car and we were talking about life and we were talking about relationships and where I was, like, what I was feeling. And I was talking to you about having a psychic reading and how my dad had come through. And then you were like, oh, I'm not really sure how to tell you this, but your dad came through on one of my readings. And I just remember losing it in the car. So I'm going to let you just tell that little bit of that story.
So I dropped a real bombshell. I actually had that reading on my 30th birthday, so in January this year, and it was also around the time that I was trying to make the decision whether to come and work with you. And yeah, I remember sitting down and Tracy, the psychic medium, she said to me, you have a new opportunity or something that you're trying to make a decision on. And I said, yeah, I do. But I didn't give her too much. I always kind of like to only give enough for them to sort of give you back what you need to hear without having too much bias thrown in there. And wholeheartedly trust them. That's why I'm there, right? And she said to me, oh, is it for Emily Wilson? And I was like, yeah, how do you know that? She's like, oh, that's why he's here. And at that point in time, I actually didn't realize that you had lost your dad, because I'd always, I guess, known that you had a stepdad. So we had never had that conversation before. And then, she said to me, oh, Emily's dad's come through and he has said, and he gave me some messages for you, which I've since told you what they were, but basically just said everything's going to be okay. And you need to take this opportunity because I think it's going to be so much more for you than what you think it is. And along with that, he just said for me to tell you that, you're guided and everything will be okay. So that was pretty wild for him to have come through on my reading when we've obviously never met. So that was probably...
And I'd never heard of anything like that before. I'd obviously been to psychics before, but I'd never heard of, I don't know, someone coming through for somebody else. And the fact that she could obviously sense it was the same person is just crazy in my book. And you can't brush that kind of thing off. And so that was just another one of those confirmations that it's all okay. And honestly, there's been so many things, as you know, that have come up since, and the things I've had to work through, and things very recently that are so similarly aligned to how he was in his life and how I tried not to be. And now what I'm facing is just very, very interesting. And so probably even to hear now, you say everything will be okay, it kind of hits a bit differently. So anyway, I'm just going to say thank you for that. And we're going to kind of, so that I don't cry too much, we're going to go into the human design stuff and just talk about what we sort of found. So in your human design, you have different gates alongside your profile and being a generator, so your energy type and all of those kind of things. And Lou is a 6-2 in her profile. And like we said, as a 6-2, like basically you're like this wise sage. You're there to help others see things. For me, I'm a 2-4. So Lou and I probably connect, and I'm just going to keep this really simple and brief because I haven't talked a lot of human design in here yet. But we've both got the 2 in our profile. So because hers is on one side of her profile and mine's on the other, we kind of can see those similarities in each other, and that helps us, I guess, feel a little bit more connected in that and understand each other. But you also have these other parts play out, and your gene keys also are interlinked in that. And I was doing some work with Emma Dunwoody, who I've been doing a mastermind with, and we were talking one day about inner child work and healing that, and what does she need, because I'm always someone who's just go, 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 and I don't nurture or probably take care of myself enough. And then we started talking, and so for me, my gene key or my SQ is kind of represents your inner child in a simple way. And for mine, it's really interesting because the thing that you've heard me talk about is that I always thought joy was silly and it wasn't adult enough, and it wasn't something that would get you ahead. So I never prioritized my joy and my pleasure. But for me, it's universal love. So it's like everybody getting along. It sounds like the most airy-fairy thing, but as a kid, I wanted everyone to get along. I loved everyone. I, loved talking to everybody. And that's something that got squashed a little bit because I was taught to then be quiet and be good and whatever the version of good is, right? But that, don't be loud, don't get up in everyone's face, don't try and make everyone happy. Just please, by being quiet and not, and not being too loud and boisterous and having too much fun. So then I was, having to cook and clean and do these tasks. And so I learned that joy and pleasure was no good. But what I've seen now is, for anyone who's been doing any of that inner work, when you bring back to life what that inner child needs, and for me, joy, paragliding, learning to kite surf, hanging out with you guys, laughing, dancing to country music, whatever it is, those things are actually super, super important. And then everything else flows. So we started talking about it, and I said, I'm going to have a look into your gene keys because I think there's a bit more in that. And I was reading through, and before we got to the gene key for your child, your inner child stuff, I was like, what the hell is going on here? Because it's where I realized I could take all of these feelings that I had, this seeming knowing of like, Lou was supposed to come work for me. We can take the psychic reading, we can take all of the airy-fairy stuff. And even though human design, depending on how you see it, can seem airy-fairy, it was like this tool that I then had in front of me, and I had it all written down, and it was like everything in Lou's gene keys and human design was there for me to help her grow and her to propel me. So 2 of them that really stood out was the vocation and your life's purpose. So you have these certain gates, gene keys, that get activated, and you work through different stages of those. And you can be in your expansion, and you can go into acidic state, and that's where you're really playing with life the right way. Otherwise, you can be in a repressed, like, shadow state, which most of us are often in. And when you read through it and you see where you're at in your life, it's super fun to play with. And for me, my life's work, it's the coolest word. It's called superabundance. It's like everyone wants to be super abundant, right? it's super abundant, just enjoying life, doing all of the things. And for me, in the line of pleasure, so in the line of dancing, and which means just dancing with life and playing with it. And again, something I've really had to learn, but when I've started doing it, I'm noticing all of these things line up. And I'll walk into you at work and I'll be like, guess what happened today? I had this conversation and then this conversation lined up with this, and I can't believe I just had that happen. And you're like, no way, I can't believe that just happened. And now you're seeing that in your life as well. But your vocation, so your work is superabundance. And for you to do your work as superabundance, and it's also in the line too, but with that gene key, it's in the form of marketing, which is like, look, Lou, you're on the right track. And now you are becoming more abundant in that. I can see that. I can see where you're lighting up, and I can see where you're starting to trust yourself where you didn't 9 months ago. Like I said a bit earlier, like more dreams and more goals and more vision than you did, and more trust that, oh shit, this stuff might happen and I'm actually contributing to this. And so it's really cool to look at it and go, literally everything you do, your analytical brain, your vocation is literally here to serve my life's work. And by doing that, you're bringing yourself to your life's work. And I just think that's super cool.
When starting my journey of self-discovery, I felt alone and lost. That's why I'm so incredibly dedicated to this podcast and passionate about building you a place of community to help you remember exactly who you were before life got in the way. So with that said, word of mouth is one way we can grow this community. So please share this with your friends and family. And so you don't miss an episode, I'd love for you to tap the subscribe button. Now, let's get back to the episode.
It's almost like yin and yang in a way, isn't it? Like we bring these equal parts, but together it's basically like feeding each other's abundance. And
Abso-freaking-lutely. Honestly, like we are so similar, and yet so different. Like, you are analytical. You think things differently. We look at that SQ, for example, that I was going in to look at, and then I went off on a tangent and down a rabbit hole because it was so fun to play with your gene keys and human design. But your SQ, something that you've learned to hide or squash or try and change, for you, yours was like routine and certainty and structure. Mm-hmm. And like, I can see where that plays out at work, where you need it. And yet you're saying to me, you tried to be like, how do I go with the flow more? Because you would because you always look to those other people and see that they have these things that you're missing. Like, I will look at you and be like, how come she can have structure? She gets to the gym all the time. Why does she eat so well all the time? She's so routine. She's so methodical. Without her, I couldn't do all of this stuff. And then flip side is, you're probably looking at me going, yeah, but then she goes with the flow and she's following her emotion and her gut. And I see flippant, emotional, never stays on track, right? So this is just how it goes. It's so fun.
Yeah. And I remember you saying to me, when you're younger, did you feel the need to have like structure and routine? And I was like, yeah, 100%. And it's something I think we all have parts of ourselves that piss ourselves off, right? And that was one of mine. And I was like, why do I have to be just so structured all the time? Like, why can't I just not have something planned? And, you know, like people turn up to airports at 30 minutes before their flight and they're like, yeah, she'll be right. But for me, I'm like a week out packing my bags and making sure I'm going to check into my flight, or I don't know. So yeah, it's it definitely helps you as a tool, like human design as a tool. It definitely helps you understand more about yourself. And I guess you can be a little bit easier on the parts of you that, you know, are authentic, I guess, that you maybe look to other people to change that. So yeah, I found that very beneficial.
Well, I'm curious now, and you won't get fired. I promise. It doesn't matter what you say. It's off the record, except it's recorded in here forever. What have you noticed has been maybe your biggest struggles that over, say, the last 9 months? And I'm not saying it's definitely not all from just coming to work on board, but the things that you have really noticed, whether it's starting to do some more work on yourself, whether it's starting to look at the human design, the things that you struggled with the most in you that maybe you see them as a bit more strengths, or just where you're enjoying life more that you weren't noticing those things before. I'd really be curious as to those differences.
I always found it hard to switch off work, and I think being a Capricorn as well, like we're pretty renowned for being ambitious and like career focused, and that's kind of always been my driving point. I guess like I have been doing a bit more work this year on like understanding where I hit roadblocks in relationships, and the more and more that I delve into that, the more I'm beginning to wonder whether that was always a mask to prioritize work opposed to, I guess, sitting in the uncomfortable of not having someone, or, like it's almost in that state of constantly doing. So this year, and normally like I'm one to set I set yearly goals, pretty heavily. And again, I'm probably, I guess a bit high, like I have high expectations on those often as well. But this year I actually set no goals. Well, that's a lie. My only goal was to slow down. And so I think even having started working with you and seeing how you lean more into play, that's really helped me take a step back and I guess not feel like I'm just constantly in this work mode all the time. Like there's definitely still parts of it, me, that I feel like I should constantly be doing and thriving and, getting us to a certain point. But that's probably something that has been a challenge, but is also something that I've started to unlearn. So,
and I think there's good and bad in that too, because it's something that I've always beat myself up about as well, like having to work hard. But then also if I take time off, what will people think, right? Because my identity lay in that for so long. I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad to have those high goals. I really don't. And have that drive. I think it's that we just have to understand that it's okay. And maybe because we don't necessarily have to always hit them, because maybe we hit them in a different way than we ever thought we would. And because we've probably set higher ones than anybody else would have set in the first place, like, or a lot of people. So, that's okay, because hitting 80% of 150, is still most people's 100%. And I think that's a big thing. But I would also say you didn't set any goals this year, but I reckon we smashed out a few without having set them, specifically.
And I mean, even as far as launching this podcast, it was when I come on board, we sat down and we had a conversation about where you wanted to take. At the time, it was still Dash Mount, your personal brand. So even since then, it's taken a journey of its own. And yeah, podcasts was always on the table, but in my brain, I was like 2024, we're hitting the ground running with that. But here we are, December 2023, and we're,
and that's the combination. That's the combination, right? Because I was like, I feel like this has to happen now, and I'm not willing to wait because I'm impatient, and that's my downfall. So I'm like, no, I feel like the time's now and it has to happen. And then I'm like, I really don't want to put more on you, because I can see you like your structure and routine, and I really want you to feel like you're achieving and you're enjoying this job, and I made you come on, and I hope she's loving it. So there's all of that chatter happening. And at the same time, maybe within that, it's shown you how much you can step up. It's shown me how much I can lean in and lean on people as well, and then go, okay, we're doing this together. And so it's always this beautiful combination of, like, almost like a healing between it, right? If you can have those conversations. Like, we've had some tough conversations. We're women working together, so we've had days where there's been tears and all of that. But when the compassion steps in, and when we can separate some of that, but we can also look at, like, where we're pretty incredible and go, okay, this is where we're different, but this is why we work so well together.
And understanding that about each other, I feel like as a team, it makes us work so much better together, because we understand those parts of each other. Like, I understand how your brain works and how you lead with your emotions. And so that has been a game changer, I think. And obviously a lot of businesses don't use that structure or model to run their business, but it's having a huge success for you. So yeah.
I think that's maybe something that you helped me with, because we've talked about it before, like that boss tag. I don't like it. I hate it. But you would say things to me working in working in bigger, I would say like bigger careers. That's how I look at it, just because how I view it. But in these bigger jobs, doing all of this stuff, and yet you came into mine and said that I made you feel seen or supported, or you weren't able to have those conversations in your other jobs. And what's interesting is, from the flip side, before you would mirror that to me, it was, oh crap, I don't know how to do this, and I'm probably too emotional in it, or I need to learn to step back from that, and all of those things. And it doesn't mean that I don't have to find that balance, but it's just interesting because, again, it's one of those other places where this was supposed to play out. It was supposed to be this way for all of these reasons. And now we're conjuring up some pretty cool shit. Like, my mind is going crazy with all of the next things. So in 2024, when you're still thinking we're doing this podcast that we've already done, I'm already starting another 2 businesses alongside A Road Less Doubtful, so that we can do more travel and you can do more travel, and we can be outdoors more. And so I'm putting that out there in this podcast so that can continue to happen. Hey guys, if this episode resonated with you, please take a screenshot and share it to your Instagram stories and tag myself at A Road Less Doubtful. And if you're ready to lean into the parts of you that have been hidden away and start your road to less doubt and have way more fun, I'd love for you to join our community of like-minded women who build each other up inside our free Facebook group. Tap the link in the show notes below, and I can't wait to see you on the inside and travel this journey together. Like, you talked about your relationship stuff, that you've gone through, and how there's something I was going to comment on, and I know I'm jumping around right now, but it's going to come back together, because you talked about you maybe have hidden behind doing work a lot. And something that I was just talking to Emma today about is, she's like, do you even have time for a relationship, Emily? And it hit me because I've had people ask that before, and I've always felt so negative around that. Because I'm like, okay, it's time for me to pull back and not do so much, because how am I going to let this thing in? Because we've also discussed that for both you and I, it's a big thing for us to find somebody to see us for who we really are. And that doesn't, but we won't give up who we are for it. And that's a whole nother discussion in itself. But as you said that today, I was like, but you're a 6 in your human design, and you have these other channels, which we've discussed, which is actually about finding, your soulmate, your one. It is literally in there for you. And I have a full love channel. And so it's like this, knowing that my person will meet me when they're supposed to meet me, but I can't get there until I've found that within me. And so even just talking about me and my jaw, if I can't accept that, no one else is going to accept that. If I can't accept all of the parts of me, no one else is going to accept it. But maybe you were always supposed to be like working this hard and focusing on that, and it wasn't an excuse. Maybe you were doing all of this to get yourself to the best version of you. You were maybe doing it the perfect way all the time, because you weren't doing it like everyone else. You weren't there. And I had this conversation with a friend only a few weeks ago. And they were like, how rare it is for someone not to just be out there on dating apps and looking for someone all the time, and jumping from relationship for relationship to get validated, and, especially younger girls. And I was like, oh, you don't feel that different. But for you, I look at you and think you're doing it so the right way, because you're setting yourself up so well. And so maybe you were always supposed to be doing it this way, and it was always the perfect way. And so you just have a little bit more of those things to learn to love yourself, and then, and then they'll come.
100%. And I think this kind of comes back to as well where we say, or where you mentioned about me being you 9 years ago. And you've always, or not always, but like you questioned, how you spent your 20s and, like the white picket fence and having the kids and settling down, whether that was actually how it should have been for you. And I think I remember us having a conversation and part of you said, like, I wish that I had got to do my 20s like you have. And like, you've got to a point where you have a house and like you've really established yourself. And I think like the grass is always greener on the other side, right? We always see what we don't have. But there is always a reason for everything. And I completely trust that. Sometimes it's hard to fully lean into that, but it's going to happen one day.
It is. It's about being happy to show up exactly as you. You even right at the start of the conversation said like it was a men's world and, you weren't kind of strong enough in that space and whatever. But again, I feel like that's only the old part of Lou's narrative, because even though you might, not talk as loud as me or whatever, there's still so much strength and knowing like to who you are that I think you could have run rings around anyone and told anyone, or not told, that sounds horrible, but like you're highly capable of working in that space and being heard. It's just you didn't have that within you yet,
Yeah, I think that comes with age, right? And experience, and you only learn through what you've been through. And that's probably like leading back to our conversation that we had when you were heading down to the dentist and we were talking about jaw surgery. And then I guess being okay with who you are for others to accept you. And for me, like I'm leading into double jaw surgery next year. So that was something that I guess I then was like, can I pick your brains about this? But it is, I guess it's like a pretty touchy topic for a lot of people. So, when you were happy to open up and answer questions about your jaw break and how that came about, it was, really beneficial for me to have someone to bounce, like, I guess, the process off of, because it is such, like people have surgeries every day and, most of the time there's always risk involved, but they come out of the other side and everything's fine. But being your face, it's just such a different feeling leading into it and your identity. And I guess like you can probably talk more about your experience because you've already been through it. But for me, I've known since I was a teenager that I probably would need jaw surgery if I chose to move forward with orthodontics. And it scares the absolute shit out of me because my jaw surgeon obviously explained like what the procedure would involve, and one of the things he did say was how it would change the look of my face, and that it would essentially like broaden the base of my nose and lift my cheekbones. So also coming back to your experience and how you felt post-surgery, I think we just hold so much, I guess, like of our appearance to our identity. And if that changes, then how do we handle that? Or like, how do we then feel about ourselves when that happens?
It's a hard one because it's easy to say, I just have two trains of thought on it and it's really hard. And I mean, like literally it's where doubt schmout started. It started with the fact that I had this surgery, but I didn't have a choice. Like I smashed my face. I fell face first in a hotel room in Hong Kong, and that was it. My jaw was broken. Both hinges were snapped and split through the front of my jaw. And at that point, you can't not have the surgery. It's hanging off. So, I mean, I came home and just like you said, the surgeon tells you all of the risks. So firstly, I could relate on that front because this is where the analytical mind sucks for me. It's like, so, this could happen. You can see that you've already got facial palsy. And so one side of my face was already hanging down, which I know was a fear of yours. But I'm like, can you just stop telling me all of that? Because I don't have any choice at this point. And so you've got to do it. And I was worried that I would never smile at my kids again because at that point I couldn't smile. And he's like, that muscle may never work. And I remember that being one of the hardest things. And so going from wondering if I'll ever see my kids again to wondering if I'll ever smiling, saying goodbye to them and then having to have that surgery and they're like, to me, they're legitimate concerns. They're real.
Mm-hmm.
But once I had healed, and that wasn't just, overnight, that was a lot of metal in my face. That was a lot of pureed foods. That was a lot of downtime. But once it had healed, I remember looking in the mirror and being like, but my teeth don't line up. My middle teeth at the top and my middle teeth at the bottom, they didn't line up and it was still crooked. And I was so pissed off at myself. I couldn't have been more pissed off at myself. And I went to my mum's and I just started writing on like, where did this come from? Like, why do I hold so much around how I look? Why does it matter? And I think again, we could probably do a whole nother podcast on all of that. But I think what it comes down to is you've seen yourself the same way for a really long time. And it's okay. It's so okay to want to look however you want to look because we talk about the whole tall poppy thing and not being your best version of you and all of that. So there's these two sides, right? Like you've always known that you want to have this surgery to a degree, but the fear on the other side is what if I don't like that? But then you never got to choose this body you came into anyway. And it is literally just a body. And it's only affected me that my jaw's a little bit crooked, but I can choose to just let that go, which now, it's not something that holds me back from anything. It will become, it's this fleeting thought. But for 30 odd years, I looked at myself the same way, and that's what it'll be for you. It's just almost like you're looking at someone new in the mirror. And I guess it would be the same if, you were going in for any other cosmetic procedure, right? Rhinoplasty, whatever. You just see yourself differently. And that's a hard thing to grasp, but that is not who you are. But if you want to do it because then you feel better, then you do it. And it's the judgments of everybody else too, right? It's not just... Hello. It's Emily here. You guys may have heard me talk about human design and will continue to do so throughout my podcast because it's helped me to expand my life using it as a tool along my journey. If you would like to take your first step on a road to less doubt, then download your own free personalized human design chart by clicking on the link in the show notes. Then, as you follow along on socials or the podcast, you'll be able to integrate this and gain more clarity of who you are and remember who you came here to be. Lastly, I'd love for you to join our community of like-minded women inside our free Facebook group. All links are in the show notes. All right, back to the episode.
Because for me and for you, like you had no choice. You had a broken jaw and it needed to be fixed. And for me, it's very much like I do when I talk to other people about it. Often the first, response that I get is, oh, so do you actually have to have it? Like, is it choice? And I was like, well, absolutely, I could choose not to, but I've come too far in my orthodontics now to go back against that decision. But it's not for cosmetic purposes, it's actually for function. And even having braces, like I remember the week that I had them off and I was like, I just want to go and eat a burger. Like I want to go somewhere and bite into a burger and see like the nice perfect shaped bite in the burger. So, you know, like things that people take for granted of like biting into a tomato and it not going everywhere down you. It's just the simple things that I guess don't cross people's minds, but it's actually, you know, a challenge that I face with my jaw and how it's, I guess, grown and developed when I was younger. So
But
yeah, it's a new challenge.
I listen to you say that, and the first thing is like, why do you even have to justify whether it's cosmetic or needed? Because really, again, it's your body and you can do whatever the hell you want with it, and it shouldn't be a judgment one way or the other. And you shouldn't have to feel like justifying the fact that it's for functionality makes it more okay or less okay, because it really actually does not matter. I feel like that's the first thing. And the second thing is like, you have no idea. You might freaking love your face the new way. Like, who knows? Like, and it is that other hurdle of self-trust because you have come this far. So I would say lean back into, like you just said, I've come this far to change my mind now. Well, if you want to change your mind, if it's really your mind, then change it. But if you know within you that this is what you want to do, then you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time coming, and I think it's like another pivotal moment of growth that, you know, once you go through certain hurdles, you come out the other side and you realize why. And I think that this is exactly one of those moments that is going to happen in the not too distant future.
I absolutely think it's going to be huge for you. And I think it'll be one of those things that you can then not hide behind anymore. So who the fuck knows? I don't know if I can say that on a podcast, so they might beep that out. But who knows? Maybe this is exactly your superabundance moment. We don't know yet. We don't know.
Absolutely.
So we'll see where it takes you. And I know the feeling of the food. Mine wasn't for the perfect bite, but mine was because I had been living off pureed food, and I left the hospital and I made my brother drive me through Hungry Jack's just so I could get chips, because I just wanted one salty chip, and turns out I couldn't eat the damn chip and I just had to suck the salt off, and yet that was better than anything I had eaten in 4 months. So I can relate to the whole just satisfying nature of eating something and having it be the way you want.
And how was your, if you don't mind me asking, like how was your like post-surgery recovery? Were you in hospital for very long, or were you pretty well in and out and then you had to deal with the pureed food for 6 weeks or whatever it is?
Yeah, I was in and out pretty quickly, really, much quicker than I thought. I think for me, the lead up was so horrific and fueled by adrenaline that it was kind of a whirlwind being in hospital. I think the shaving my head, realizing it was happening, knowing, you know, where the stitches and everything were going to be was longer. And then I don't think I was only in hospital for a few days. I came out all taped up, but I had to go back every week. So I stayed in Brisbane with my brother, and I went back every week for the first month so that they could check, because I had arch bars on. So that's like wire, like braces, but wire sewn between your teeth through your gums, so that it would start to pull everything across. And so they had to check that and check the stitches, and then I had to start my physio because I couldn't open my mouth more than a centimetre. So, yeah, I was only in hospital for a few days. And then, yeah, I did through Christmas because that happened. So that happened November 5 years ago. So 2017. And we were spending Christmas just after New Year on Fraser. And I took my Thermomix so that I could puree up bolognese and have risotto at that point. So that's sort of the turnaround, like mid-November to early January, I was out, able to be gone for decent periods of time and just no longer wanting sweet smoothies, if that helps answer your question.
I think it makes you appreciate food a lot more as well. And even just like that wanting to do something, like you just don't think about it until you're in that position of not being able to have it.
Yeah. And that's how we should do all of our life. And that's something that I've really started to honestly take so much notice of. Like, I thought I cried a lot before. But like, I cry over the simplest things now out of like beauty, like sitting on the top of the mountain before we were paragliding and it started raining, and I sat there and I just turned a song on and I was just watching the world go by, and I was so content, and the beauty of that. I took myself down to the beach to watch the thunderstorm and the beauty of the lightning. And yeah, that Christmas, my little meringue, my pavlova, I still don't forget it. The pavlova floating down Eli Creek because it melted in my mouth was the best tasting thing like ever. And I think we take so many things for granted and we overthink so many things that we shouldn't even think about because no one else is even looking at us for that. Like, it's literally our one life and we don't get a do-over. And it's something that I've been thinking about really strongly lately. So
Yeah,
I have to
think every bit is more consumed in their own life and what they're going through to worry about yours. And so often it's easy to get caught up in thinking about the judgments of others or like, what are they going to think? And I know you've mentioned that as well with multiple things on your venture, and yet you've just dived into it and come out the other side far better off than what you were beforehand. So
I don't know, like there could be so much more judgment out there than there ever has been towards me, like truly. And I'm literally on a platform now which has opened that up for so much more, which was why I guess this was such a big part of the experiment just for myself, selfishly. But I don't need to hear it and I don't need to know about it and I don't need to take it on board. And that's something that I was really bad at before. But now but most of the time, I only take on board the good, and I've pulled in, like yourself, like the rest of my staff, like the friends I have around me now, the people I've been able to lean on through the shitty stuff that's gone on in the last couple of weeks. That's only because I've become more of me. And that's something that I truly believe is huge. And I think you can probably see how that started to play out for you as well recently. Yeah?
absolutely.
Yeah. So like those judgments, you can worry about them or you can just become more of you and realize, oh my God, like life actually moves out of the way. And sometimes you've got to cut that stuff off so that the better stuff can come in, but you just don't know it at the time. So
Yeah.
I think we're always perfectly where we're supposed to be. And yet sometimes it's just harder to sit in that. So if we just take the damn pressure off and just trust.
Life's good.
Life's good. Turn off the monkey mind and trust the intuition and watch those synchronicities flow. All right. Well, we're going to get off. I think we're going to wrap that up. I think we have covered most of the things that have gone on between us and most of those synchronicities. I feel like there's so much more, but they're just in like our daily chats, like, down to me bringing in some of that medical stuff today, down to, oh my God, just not going to bar. So many things daily that we talk about. They're like, guess what happened? So I'm just really excited for the next I'm just going to say 6 months. What's going to happen in 6 months? We don't need to go to 12 months. And you coming through your surgery and seeing how that all goes and knowing that you'll have us there with you. Yeah, although I have to lose you for work for a bit, so that's a bit shit, but that's it.
You can send me recipe to get me through.
Absolutely, that's a great idea. I can do that. And highly recommend a chip on exit.
Yeah, excellent. Extra chicken salt, please.
All right. Well, we're going to jump off and then we're actually going to go hang out in person and go have a margarita and some Mexican to say bye to another staff member. So I shall see you really shortly, Lou. Thank you for jumping on with me and we will chat again soon.
Has been a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.